Hey guys, in this video we're going to be checking out the Hasbro Marvel Gamerverse. This is Marvel vs. Capcom Iron Man vs. Mega Man X. Before we have a closer look at the figures, let's get some sizing. Let's figure out the heights here. Iron Man is about 4 1/4 of an inch tall. Meanwhile, Mega Man X is almost closer to 4 inches. When the set was first announced, I really was anxious to get my hands on this because specifically for the Mega Man X. I ended up finding this at EB Games here in Canada, which I'm sure it could be the same place where you would find it as well. You can also probably check GameStop and stuff like that also. The Iron Man, we don't really need to spend a whole lot of time on. We've seen this guy before. This guy was part of the, I think it was the Iron Man 2 3 3/4 inch wave of figures. And this might be like the probably like the Mark 3. Mark 3, I think. The figure itself isn't bad. I mean, of course, it's basic when it comes to its articulation, more importantly in the legs. It's got that horrible articulation that I really don't like, where it's a hinge joint where you can move the legs out. But in order to move the legs forward, you have to rotate that same hinge around so that you can actually bring the leg forward and back, because you can't really do that just yet. One thing I do want to mention before I forget this is the quality of the figure. The figure itself feels, and I was trying to think very, very hard how I would describe this. The best one I could come up with is he feels like red licorice. Specifically red licorice, and not black licorice, because black licorice does have a little bit more of a density to it. But red licorice, not only in the kind of gummy texturing of it, but also the flimsiness of the plastic. It doesn't feel like it's the most... not the sturdiest of plastic, if it makes any sense. Like, it's already a very small figure anyway, so it's not going to have a lot of weight to it. But the plastic quality feels like it should be made out of candy. It feels like it almost wants to be a knockoff, even though I know it's not. But that's kind of the impression I'm getting here when I'm looking at the figure. Zooming in, let's have a look at Iron Man, which I guess paint-wise isn't terrible. I mean, they've gone ahead and at least outlined the areas around his eyes, so they didn't just splotch some white paint in there and call it a day. The same cannot really be said for the arc reactor, because it does look like they did exactly what I just finished saying they didn't do for the eyes. It looks like they just took a paintbrush and just dabbed it with white. It's not the most cleanest presentation, nor can really be said for the little top areas of the torso area here. He's got a little bit of accent areas that are painted in the kind of that white silver color. So at least they didn't miss all the elements. The gold is a nice touch, which carries itself into the legs, the front area of the thigh and the side area of the legs. Gets a little bit on the knee as well. But he doesn't really have a whole lot of coloring to him. Nor should a Mark suit of this denomination should really have a lot of color, because like the primary colors of Iron Man are red and gold. And I have to say it's presented here in the figure just fine. Paint's not really big on the issue of what I have problems with this figure. It's not necessarily the paint. It's just the fact that the plastic feels like I could literally take the leg and I can bend the leg for just the density of the plastic that they used. It feels like they did really use cheap plastic when it comes to making this figure. It's ever more apparent when you start like moving his articulation. Let's talk about articulation now on this guy. His head is on a ball joint, so no problems there whatsoever. Shoulders hinge outward. Yes, the shoulder pads will pop off a lot. You'll just have to kind of replace them. It's basically the same thing that I had the problems with when it came to the original 3 3/4 inch figures. These shoulder pads pop off a lot. So when you are rotating the arms, hinging them outward at least, you'll find that the arms, the shoulders, hinging the arms outward, those shoulder pads will just pop right off. The arms rotate forward and back. You got some coloring at least there painted on the repulsors. But again, not really. Some additional blue could have gone a long way outlining these areas. Instead, they kind of just favor a very subtle white. A little bit extra could have gone a long way. He does have a bend in the elbow, rotation at the forearm, rotation in the hand, and a hinge back and forth. It's actually even more apparent, the texturing or the quality of the plastic when you have a look at the fingers. The fingers are just very, very rubbery. Very rubbery like, yes, red licorice. I just dropped one of the shoulder pads. Then we have a look at the legs. The legs swivel at the hinge of the thigh. They split outward, but like I mentioned before, you have to rotate the leg forward, or you have to kind of get this joint, see this joint right here? This has to rotate around so that you can actually hinge the leg. Without that, all you can really do is this until you rotate the leg, and then you'll be able to go forward and back. He has a double hinge on the knee, just feels really rubbery. And then he's got the articulation in the foot. I'm not forgetting about the shoulder pad. I'll go and grab that in a second. But before we do that, let's have a look at Mega Man, which I think it really is the star attraction of this release, because we didn't really get a Mega Man released figure before. I'm sure this probably has been used at some point, maybe by maybe this was like an overseas Mega Man release, or maybe they tooled a brand new mold figure. It's possible. He does have a little bit of that marbling in the plastic. The coloring choice is really quite nice, where the lighter blue as well as this kind of metallic blue that they used, it really, really does well on this figure. It's got a nice black outlining here around the trunk area, the elbow pad area, even right around the wrists also have some nice decorative black added there. Very large, blocky feet, exactly how Mega Man would appear. As for his face, a really nice face sculpt. It's almost like they put a lot more effort into Mega Man than they did with Iron Man, which is really a shame. I like the outlining there that they've done on the eyes. Even like the pupils have been painted in there as well. And I do like his facial expression. Paint for the most part is pretty clean. I don't have any issues with the paint. There's a few little areas where it's a little messy, as well as the mold. You can see the way the mold came out. You've got a little bit of that marring kind of to the plastic. Other than that, though, it's a pretty clean looking presentation for Mega Man. One thing, though, I will say, he's very loose. Iron Man didn't so much have the problem. His problem was more so the plastic. I do kind of get the same vibe from Mega Man X. Like the plastic feels like it's a little more on a more pliable level, but at least it feels a little bit more durable than it does the Iron Man over there. But what I do find, though, is he's a little on the loose side. You know, you have a lot of very thin limbs and very then blocky appendages, such as the legs here, that of course you're going to get a bit of a loose figure, especially in the leg area. Mega Man's articulation, though, his head is on a ball joint. So I do like that quite a bit. It's really nice, cool decorative details there on the back of the helmet as well. The arms rotate all the way around. They hinge outward. They have a bend at the elbow, but the elbow really doesn't bend all that much. This is about as much as you're really going to get from the elbow bend. It's very, very minimal. The forearm rotates. Same thing can be said for this side as well. And it doesn't seem like he's got articulation in the hand. I say hand rather than hands because, of course, he doesn't have it on this side. Upper torso ball joint. Nothing in the waist, but I mean, you can really get a lot of that more so from the torso anyways. You really don't need anything in the waist. And then he's got a very generous amount of articulation in the legs, out, forward, and back. But again, as a result of that, he is very loose in the leg area. He does have a bend in the knee, although it's just very, very difficult to bend at the knee without feeling like you're bending against the peg, and that's certainly not something that you want to be doing. Rotation in the foot, and then lastly, he's got a ball joint in the actual foot portion of the boot, where he does have an ankle pivot and a forward and back motion on the leg. Of course, one can't also forget the accessory that he comes included with. Iron Man doesn't come with one. I kind of wish that they had done the same thing that they did with Mega Man here. Not certainly to this size, but something that you could have plugged into his repulsor blast. Just something that, you know, it would rival then what Mega Man has. But he does have this kind of somewhat translucent. It kind of looks like Monster Tweety Bird from Looney Tunes cartoon, when Tweety Bird got really, really big and he was beaten up. Sylvester would like chase him into a room, and then all of a sudden there'd be like Monster Tweety. Kind of looks like that. I don't know why I'm thinking. I guess the arms, it kind of looks like arms as well. That's what's kind of giving me that impression. There's a little peg on the bottom there, and you just plug it into his arm. Just like that. Plugs in very easily. Of course, it does add a little bit of extra weight to his arm too. He stands perfectly fine, but you do feel like it's adding a lot of extra unnecessary weight to his arm. Not really much you could have done about it because, you know, it is pretty cool to display it with this. And then also one thing to mention as well, that he does have peg holes on the undersides of his feet. So does Iron Man as well. The beginning of this review, I just used I think it was a Ghostbusters peg, which came from, I think, the Library Ghost, or it might have come from Slimer. I just so happened to find it, and it actually works out quite well for Marvel Legends, as well as the smaller, in this case, the 3 3/4 inch Iron Man. I just pegged that into the back, but just to make it clear, they don't come with any sort of display stands. I just used that for the beginning of this review, but they don't actually come with any sort of display stands. The real reason for picking up this set, in my honest opinion, is the Mega Man X. The Mega Man X turned out quite good. He's a little loose on the limbs, mind you, but a smaller version of smaller representation of the Blue Bomber is really a nice touch for a set that I think otherwise could have been a pass. The Iron Man is okay, but I almost feel like Hasbro just sort of phoned it in when they released this figure along with Mega Man. Clearly, Mega Man got more of the attention when it came to this release, and it's very apparent when you look at the two figures. Iron Man feels a little flimsy. He doesn't really come with any sort of the extra accessories that Mega Man X came with. And I feel like a slightly varied paint job would have really made this guy shine. Instead, what we kind of get is we get an Iron Man that somebody has just kind of gone through the kitchen drawer, found an Iron Man from a previous release line, and just threw it in. Much needed paint and love, I think, could have been given to Iron Man, similar to the kind of love that they gave with the Mega Man X. Clearly, this set, my honest opinion, the set here is a pickup, more so for Mega Man X, less for Iron Man. Today, once again, we were having a look at the Hasbro. This was the Marvel Gamerverse. Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. This was Iron Man vs. Mega Man X. If you guys like this video and certainly want to see more videos like this and haven't had a chance yet to subscribe to this channel, what are you waiting for? Hit that little subscribe button down below. You won't miss a beat when it comes to future videos. And as always, guys, thanks for watching as you always do. I'll see you next time.